Everybody, welcome to another brand new Because Cannabis podcast every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube, Thursdays on Spotify, and anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. Make sure you give us a subscription, give us a follow. We would definitely appreciate that. My name is B.C. Wehman. That is Dustin Kava. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, man?
It's going well, man. Every single week, we got a brand new adventure, a brand new thing that we're talking about in the cannabis industry. Got a great guest today. Super stoked to talk with Sam Fisher, Green Dispensary Marketing, see what's going on in the world of cannabis marketing, cannabis branding, things that we dig, Dustin. Like me and you, when we start to dig into this world and we're talking nitty gritty, I know you like a little more technical. You probably hoping and praying. Note to Sam who's listening right now, you say blockchain, you're going to get Dustin's antennas all up in the air. You're probably hoping we talk blockchain. I just like to talk colors and fonts. Let's go deep into sans serif. You know what I'm saying? That's what the people want, Dustin. We've been talking. How do we get our numbers up? I say more serif for sans serif conversations. That is what the people demand.
Is it serif or serif?
Maybe that's my fucking problem.
Yeah, that's maybe.
Dustin. I like serif. It sounds like a nice, bolden name. I know. Is it serif? It is, isn't it? God, I've never wanted to hit stop and re-record more than right now, but we don't. This is what you get. You get raw, organic, unfiltered cannabis conversations every single week on the internet. Dustin and I dropping it to you. Dustin, we're creative fellas. We like to dabble. We like to put artwork out into the universe. Have you ever created art? Don't give me your glasses art conversation. It's another show for another day. I'm sure it is. Outside of glasswork, have you ever created a painting? Like, you ever written a book, a short novella? You ever written or created artwork and then put it out into the universe? Besides this, which is highbrow shit. Have you ever created something, put it out to be digested by the masses?
I mean, I guess web development is sort of in that spectrum. I probably have written multiple books worth of copy for websites over the last 25 years.
I don't think that counts. I'm negating your answer. Nah, man, it's not like that's corporate consumption. Like, I want to read on a website. I'm talking like I went through a phase, Dustin, right around the time COVID hit a couple years ago, right? Going through the time everyone's rescinding back in. Everyone's trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do. You're so bored. I started reading a lot of comic books, went deep back into the comic book world and really started to get into it. Started getting into script writing of comics and how they flow. Then I started writing comic scripts. In fact, Dustin Kava, I got second place in a comic book script writing contest. Did you know that? I also got third place in a stand-up comedy contest, and I lost to an 8-year-old. So I've never actually, I don't know what that means. And this comic never got published, but I went through this time phase where I was trying to write content. I was trying to put it out into the world. Here's what I realized. I think this is what a lot of authors realize, what a lot of people who sit down and try to put their fingertips all over those keyboards and make a lyrical content, poetry come out. Ideas, maybe not easy, but easier. Completion of task, so hard, so difficult, right? It's like, it's amazing up here when you have those ideas and they exist in the ether, and then you start to snatch them down, right? And you start to put those fingers on the keyboard and you feel like you're putting ideas to paper. And then like about, 4 words in, you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna talk about anymore. It's kind of like the intro to the show, right?
I just fucking hate forced creativity. I hate every job I've had in the last 20 years has always been this, like, you need to create today at this time, at this thing, and I'm just like, it's just not how I am. I work better, 2 a.m, jump on and figure out some shit than I do at, the 9 to 5. And I just feel like if I was to create a comic book, it would just be another day job.
Yeah, it's what it all comes down to. Let's ask this. Let's ask Sam. Let's bring our guest in right now. Sam Fisher, Green Dispensary Marketing. We're going to get to your brand and stuff and all of the stuff you're doing in marketing in a bit, Sam. You're an author. It says on your LinkedIn page that you've written published books, and you will only tell your entire bibliography if we're cool and nice enough to you and we're friends. So the question everybody wants to know, Sam Fisher, what books have you written and why won't you tell people about them?
You caught me off guard there. First of all,
that's my specialty, Sam. That's what I do.
It's an honor to be on this show, Dustin B.C. Great to speak with you guys. And yes, I was going to ask about your strategies for writing. But yes, I've written 5 books, and so one of them was actually I'll kind of break the mold right now on the air. I didn't want to publicly say that I wrote it because my graphic design game was not on point. That was before I met my wife, and so we make this great combination where she's this great graphic designer, so maybe we'll republish it. But if you get on Amazon right now, search 50 Creative Ways to Blaze by Samuel Amaru.
It's a great title, by the way.
My ghost-written books.
Great title.
The cannabis industry. Other than that, I used to run a mobile DJ business, and so actually my top-selling book is this book called The DJ Bible. You know, it makes me like $100 a month passive income. Not the big time here, but it's good little passive income, right? But yeah, other than that, I got some happiness books, some self-improvement books.
Well, they say the secret is, right? So Dustin, and to talk to Sam's point, they say the secret is to really be good at writing is you have to become that disciplined, forcing creativity, exactly what you tried to avoid, Dustin. You read a lot of these authors' books and how do they do it? A lot of them wake up first thing in the day, right? And they just kind of what they call diarrhea on the keyboard, right? They just type and whatever comes out, whatever words, it doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to really flow. Just get your brain click, 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 kicking, get your brain sending electronic impulses. So it's now firing upon those keyboards and just make it happen. And then ideally, if you force yourself into creativity early in the morning, then it starts to like fire off those synapses and then you're making magic. But that's hard as shit to do. That's all I know.
Yeah, I think an artist is always most self-critical. And so you as a writer are going to be more self-critical of your own writing than other people are. And so one of the kind of tips that I would give for people who are just trying to be right, just put pen to paper. You can edit on the back end, just write.
We are talking with Sam Fisher, Green Dispensary Marketing here on the Because Cannabis podcast. So you, not too long ago, you kind of looks like you got into Green Dispensary Marketing, but you started with really getting into digital marketing, kind of helping people understand their brands and such. Cannabis is a very kind of interesting niche market. And so I'm going to assume, I think it's a pretty safe assumption to make, Sam, you're into marketing. You're like, I like to smoke weed. Why not combine the two together? Like, that feels like cookies and chocolate and peanut butter. That's a terrible, you know what I'm saying? It's like a great recipe put together. When you started to get into it, when you went into digging into figuring out particular digital branding techniques, was that the reason you branched into cannabis? Why go into all these other industries? And let's be real, Sam, as we talk about Green Dispensary Marketing and what you're doing for the cannabis industry, it feels like there may be more money if you just told people how to sell cars and computers. Like cannabis, it's such a niche market and it's got these really particularness to it. Why go into it and try to say, hey, I have this skill set. I would like to apply this skill set to weed.
Look, cannabis is something I've been passionate about since I was like 16 years old. I'm 31, about to turn 32 years old. Other than that, really, in marketing, I have a big marketing background. Other than that, my only background would be in education or in nightlife. And so when I was kind of like thinking of niches to dive into, it's one of the things I wanted to do when we started this company was to have a niche, to be an expert in the niche and to go into a niche that I know. And so if I were to go into cars or something like that, yeah, I could talk about, oh yeah, look at this 4-wheel drive, whatever, but it's not something I'm really passionate about. It's not something I really know. And so I wanted to kind of, as you put it, combine two things that I know into a business. And so that's kind of where this came along. And so one of the big challenges, as you know, we do make some money in the cannabis industry, but is the big challenge that all of us kind of faces these restrictions and these the blacklists, you know, the algorithms and getting shadow banned on platforms. And so that kind of brings in the opportunity for like these alternatives to Google Maps, like for example, Weed Maps and Leafly, to kind of just take upon 10 years of SEO building on their websites to kind of leverage their position in the market to approach these dispensaries brands. Be like, hey, we're already ranked #1 for all these terms, man. If you pay us money, we'll feature you. And so kind of what I noticed that kind of going into this, and it's like, why do we have to have a monopoly to these sorts of platforms? Why do we have to have a monopoly? Why can't we beat them organically? Why can't dispensaries compete and beat these big giants like Weed Maps and Leafly? So that was kind of my thoughts coming into this business. That's why I'm here.
I always wonder, you know, marketing is one of those things where tends to be the first thing cut in an industry that isn't making very much money. And
it's like
so
the band section in school budgets, right? Like when cannabis companies have to make cuts, they're like, well, we got good genetics. We're not cutting our lighting budget. We're going to cut our marketing budget. Like that is 100%.
And so, in thinking in that way, how do you convey that messaging that this is absolutely a necessity in their day-to-day operations, and truly how much, effort they should be putting into it as opposed to kind of what they think they should be putting into it?
Well, let me kind of address the obvious. I think a lot of people kind of look at marketing people like snake charmers as like make a ton of promises on the front end and deliver nothing on the back end. And I think that's kind of where we get that and kind of a bad look in the eyes of not just in cannabis, but other industries as well. And so when you start throwing out words like SEO, is oh yeah, number one on Google, guaranteed, bro. Because a lot of these companies.
I mean, I have Google tattooed on my arm, so I'm like,
Did I know that? Hold on a sec. Hold the fuck on a second, Dustin Kava. Have we talked about this before? I do smoke a lot of weed. Did we talk about this before? Because I don't think I know that.
I have known you for fucking over a decade almost at this point. You had to have known. You had to.
I'm a little creeped out by that. I can be honest, Sam. If I would have known that, I wouldn't have invited you on the show. That's a little creepy. Bezos cult over here. Wow.
But SEO has always been a large portion of my life. Owning the being an entrepreneur and running the businesses that I have and owned. SEO is my greatest strategy against my competitors who know absolutely nothing about it. And so, I've always seen the necessity in that way, but conveying that to the cannabis world has been much harder of a challenge than, say, a manufacturing company that does something totally outside the niche, or a car wash company, or, like literally almost any other industry I've ever entered into. And I've built hundreds and hundreds of websites and catered and designated policies that work towards certain goals in almost every other industry. But it's the cannabis industry where they're like, I could just post people are going to buy my product no matter what. So why the fuck do I care about any of this? I mean, it's a logistical thing on how far you are from the person, as opposed to, we're just not saturated in the same way that Denver is, or Oklahoma, or California. We have very few licenses. They are few and far between each other. And so in terms of Ohio representation, how would you convey that to someone in Ohio, to a brand that doesn't really have any competition?
Can I ask you a question, Dustin?
Yeah, heck yeah.
You said you built 100 different websites, SEO, so that's awesome. What would happen? Or excuse me, let me rephrase that. What would happen if you were to stop making content, stop pumping out backlinks? What would happen to these websites?
I mean, obviously that delisting, the algorithm is consistently changing, and today that algorithm represents the most useful information displayed in the quickest and most accessible, friendly way. And so, clearly, obviously, if you stop publishing content, you're just going to get delisted, as opposed to someone who is publishing content. This idea that it's not hard for someone else to keep working their way up that chain over you locally. But at the same point, our customers, the ways in which I would bring the SEO to them, to these brands today, the ways in which I would ask them, hey, we're going to target these specific keywords or these specific phrases and so on. Again, I'm seeing more locality based on personal algorithms than worldly algorithms, meaning that, like, it is, what have you searched before, prior? Where are you located? What have the friends that are associated with your account, have they been searching and have actively went to, in terms of, a store and whatnot. And that combination is a little bit more difficult now for us to specifically say, this is the right way. This is going to work in a localized setting better than, say, something else. And so I think it's gotten a hell of a lot more complicated, and we are seeing algorithmic changes that are knocking things down at a much higher rate and with a much more, I don't know how to say it, like penalty, or, like there's a higher penalty now for certain mistakes that you're making, as opposed to not doing anything. So I'm seeing I'm seeing less traffic with people who are producing content, but are doing it in the wrong way than people who don't produce any content at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the big points that kind of gets lost in translation when we're doing these, when we're optimizing a website for SEO or making pages, one strategy, the old way of doing this, is you might just make an informational post. It's like how many grams are in an eighth, and you could rank that, and you could get 5,000 clicks in a month on that. How many sales is that going to generate?
Exactly.
And so, one of the things that we try to do with our agency is to focus on these money keywords. And so, obviously, the big one's dispensary near me. There's also service areas. But that's another rabbit hole that we can go into, as well as the Google My Business optimization. And so oftentimes, for example, I'm going to be posting, I have like posts scheduled out for a week on LinkedIn. One of the posts I'll be posting up soon is kind of an example of what happens when you search dispensary near me. And so the top 3 posts will be Google My Business listings, usually, because you can't do ads in this space. And so if you have a Google My Business listing, you're getting good reviews, it's optimized, you can get listed right there, top 1, 2, 3. Usually from there, the next ones up will be Weed Maps and Leafly. And so this kind of raises the questions, like, why do we go to Weed Maps and Leafly then if we're just paying for a number 4 or 5 rank? And then from there, unless these service pages are optimized, then you'll get to see the rankings for these service pages. And so what you want to try to do, as opposed to making these informational content, in my experience, you want to focus on money content, and you want to optimize in more ways than one. You want to also optimize the Google My Business listing and also simultaneously put in service pages. And if you're balling and you're just sitting there with money to spend, and you're getting an ROI, then yeah, I'll also simultaneously be on Leafly Weed Maps. Then all of a sudden, you own the top 7 spots in your area. It's really that simple.
It's an interesting place, Sam. We're talking with Sam Fisher from Screen Dispensary Marketing. You can find the link to Sam's website. If you got questions, you need help with your dispensary, you can follow that link, get in touch with Sam Fisher. He will take care of you. It's an interesting place because the industry, I feel like, is at a bit of a crossroads. It's always at a crossroads of such. But right now, I think the traditional dispensary experience for a lot of old school, for a lot of people who think of going to the dispensary, is walking in the door. You got your bud tender, your patient navigation specialist. They're showing you big vats of weed. You're pulling it out. You're putting in jars. Maybe you don't have sniffer jars. Maybe it's all prepackaged. But they picture this kind of shopping experience or this a la carte, this educational experience. But the model is moving. It's shifting to this more and more online shopping business marketplace, right? And we can speak to Ohio. I know these stats exist elsewhere. Ohio is easily 60% of orders picked up at a dispensary are start on the online shopping site, right? They shop on their Dutchie, their iHeart Jane, whatever their service is that they're using for their website system. That's where they start shopping. And so I think, to Dustin's original point of how we're trying to convince companies in Ohio or beyond, like, how do you get into digital marketing? You guys are talking about the importance of showing up in a search, right? And I just did that as you're talking. I typed dispensary near me. The first 2, by the way, are like med card clinics. They're not even dispensaries. They're places where you can get your med card. And then it was one dispensary, and then it was Weed Maps and Leafly. It's exactly what you called, Sam. So it's interesting that I think people, CEOs, presidents, suits in the roots industry, so to speak, I think they look at the dispensary operations as having to be this inside setting. But with the rise of drive-thrus, with the rise of curbside, which really became prevalent during COVID and still exists today, with more and more folks purchasing online, I think that's been the question of newcomers and brands. How do you help, or how do we think we can help brands, like not so much dispensaries? How can we help brands stand out against all these other areas when you're trying to Google like dispensary near me, edibles near me, and there's a billion brands? How can we help brands optimize their position, whether it's through an iHeart Jane Dutchie website or through just their Google presence, to turn that kind of searches into dollars? And how do they measure that?
So this is a pretty extensive question. I'll do my best to answer that.
That's all right. We're extensive people.
What that means. One of the things I want to kind of bring up right away is nobody in this industry is an expert at everything. And so, we might be good at managing your web presence here at Green Dispensary Marketing, but as you're saying, a lot of people are shopping online these days. And so that brings in these POS systems, whether it be Trees, one of my clients just switched to Trees, we got Flow Hub, so on and so forth. And so some of these will let you optimize for the product page itself, so you can rank for the product page itself. Otherwise, the traffic goes straight to the POS. On that note, what I was trying to touch upon, nobody's an expert at everything here, and so two people that I would recommend right off the top of my head. If you want to make an awesome app for your website to kind of market your products and also increase your loyalty, I would recommend talking to Brady Halls of Digital Awesome. If you want to do delivery and you're looking for delivery, specifically in the New York East Coast area, I would recommend Brian Mejia of Grass. And so to kind of touch upon what you're talking about, it helps to have strategic partnerships across all ranges of this industry. That way, because nobody's going to be able to do everything. And so you come to a marketing agency, yeah, we'll help you with something, but we're not going to help you with everything. And so I'm starting to lose track of the question, to be honest with you, BC.
Well, I guess, what is the added benefit to them solely owning that presence, say on their personal website, as opposed to really pushing towards Leafly or Weed Maps when they do have such a high market share of active viewership or active visitors?
Okay, so let me follow that up with, why would you buy a home versus why should you just rent a home? Because that's essentially what you're doing when you're going to Weed Maps and Leafly. You're paying to use other people's assets. Once the money goes away, and so does your visibility. On the other end, on the flip side, you could be building your own assets, increasing your own organic traffic, and that's traffic that doesn't go away, especially if you continue to maintain it. It just seems like common sense to me.
Well, I think that way because I can build and maintain these things, whereas another person doesn't always have those technical skills or are willing to set aside the $15,000 to $40,000 a year to pay someone to absolutely maintain it properly. And when I see constant usage of, say, I don't know, WordPress and all these other things, then I think to myself, you're not actually really maintaining anything yourself, or you're not creating your own tools to present your own website. You're not doing it in the same way. And thus you're constantly in this mode of, in fact, I bet you with every client that you work with, when you walk into their website and you look at it, it's a piece of art as opposed to a standardized procedure. It is, this thing needs to work with this thing, which is completely different than what the next client is using and integrating with, and how they're supposed to communicate and how they're supposed to talk. And what happens when we have to do these updates on these fucking plugins, as opposed to, and I have this certain theme and this, PHP version and this fucking, and these constant variables is exactly the reason why I think someone would rent a house as opposed to building their own house. No one says owning these assets actually is the highest, is financially responsible if you're still spending twice as much. Like my house, I have a 1% interest rate on my house, fucking incredible. And at the same point, I am spending what I spend on my mortgage every month on maintaining the house. So I'm doubling what my house payment is every single month. And that's what a website is, in the same sense of it's, you're spending as much as you think, as much, the things that I liked about it was that I do have more control. They don't just knock me off if they change a policy or do something different down the line. I know that I own my content and no one else is going to remove it. That is a powerful position in the cannabis industry, where you are fighting platforms who do not like you conversating about cannabis in any way. But at the same point, I don't blame anybody for not wanting to own the house in today's age. I think that, it sounds easy, but it's always vastly more complicated and ends up taking that person 5 to 15 times longer to maintain or manage it than what is assumed.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if you're a house owner, you should learn how to cut the grass or fix pipes and all that sort of stuff. Just like if you're a dispensary owner wanting to have your own assets, you should also be learning that sort of stuff. And that's one of the things I'm happy to teach my clients, what we do, how we do it, so on and so forth. And if they want to do it on their own, completely cool with that. I just want people to succeed. And if I can help them out along the way, that's my goal. But you have a great point, Dustin.
At what point do you think that the consolidation of these networks like Weed Maps and Leafly are hurting the industry? And at what point do you think that they're truly helping the industry?
I think there is a space for them, so I do kind of tend to kind of portray them negatively just because, I kind of talked about them as an alternative to Google Maps, but really Google doesn't like cannabis. We know this.
We know this.
Facebook doesn't like cannabis. Instagram doesn't like Meta. We say Meta doesn't like cannabis. And so what they kind of offer us is this platform. It's like, hey, we like cannabis. We like your brand. You can post here. You can advertise here. Bring it on. And so I think that's kind of their value in this marketplace. And so really, honestly, maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road, I would personally like to see full out legalization. That's when we're kind of going to lose the value for these sorts of platforms, I would guess. What do I know? I'm just Samuel Fisher from Green Dispensary Marketing. Who knows? But I think they do, to kind of answer your question, they do have value right now. Will it stay that way 10, 15 years? I don't think so. I think Google's going to stick around. They're definitely going to be helpful. Your business profile is going to be helpful. Is it going to be helpful on Weed Maps and Leafly in 10 to 15 years? I personally don't think so.
That's an interesting point to think about. Like when you think about in your point, Dustin, I was thinking of consolidation and the point where eventually, like everything always gets owned by one thing, probably Google, right? So it feels like eventually Google swallows up Weed Maps and swallows up Leafly and all these other things. When you have, we're on the verge, we can talk in a second, you're on the verge of rescheduling, which is probably the first step to some of these companies, these major companies, not nitpicking as much just simply the word cannabis. That may take a few years to really get that. But if you get this legalization, if you get this descheduling, you have more acceptance, maybe you have more money for marketing budgets. And it feels like everyone is going to look at this immediateness of a Weed Maps or Leafly. But to your point, it seems like there's probably one or two companies that are going to survive it. And the odds of a Weed Maps versus a Google seems unlikely. So to think about where the money should be spent.
And does rescheduling open up the door for the big boys to finally take over these?
Yeah, it just makes it easier for them now.
See, what's funny? I was just talking to a cannabis attorney in New York City. His name is Jeffrey Hoffman. Very knowledgeable guy. He's been following this new rescheduling thing. And I'm going to paraphrase what he said because, he's way smarter than I am in these sorts of things. But we were talking about this, the Schedule 1 going down to Schedule 3 and whether or not it's a good thing. And he doesn't think so. He actually thinks it's going to have a lot more negative impacts than it will positive. And it's specifically because of these big brands coming after these smaller brands on a state level. Hey, you're using our products. This is our stuff. And so, again, I'm paraphrasing. I'm not putting in the right words. But that's kind of what he's envisioning. And I think that's really interesting on that note. And I think really what we need to go for is complete descheduling, really, at the end of the day. Like, where's alcohol on this controlled substance list?
Mm-hmm.
It is. I mean, it's a small victory. I mean, I think everyone can agree, especially in the cannabis place. It's not where you want to be. It's not the ideal victory, but it is a step, right? It is a W for now. But to your point, both Sam and Dustin, that is something that I don't think enough people have considered. The mantra has been, especially for the small companies, is finally, if we have some rescheduling, we can work around and make our issues with IRC 280E a lot easier. We can have some of the same tax benefits, that alcohol, that cigarettes, that casinos, that any other addiction type aspect has, those vices, and we can find ourselves to be financially competitive, right? We're probably still not going to pay our employees, but we're going to try, right? That's, we all know that. But it feels like that move has been trumpeted and highly regarded by the small business owner as finally I can get up and be able to compete with the big boys. But to both of
do they
points,
want to? Don't they just fucking
like the big boys are going to get stronger? Like they're going to have more power.
And what is the average exit time in this industry right now? Average license holders are only holding licenses for 3 to 5 years before they sell out to another holder, a larger company that's going to vertically integrate them in a different way or expand their market. So why do they even give a damn? Why are they complaining about something that they're just going to end up selling to anyways? When they say, oh, fuck the man, it's like you're about to go sell to the man in 5 years anyways. So what do you give a damn?
Because the man pays.
Well, if that's your exit strategy, then just do it. Yeah, who cares, right? If you want to get out, if you have an exit strategy to sell, just sell. Don't even worry about the rescheduling.
Well, is it because of 280E that they are exiting? Is it these specific policies that are causing them to sell to the larger, or is it really the plan? I mean, I would say that, and I've probably worked with, I don't know, 15 cultivators and dispensaries over the last 3 to 5 years. And I guess I've never heard any of them really talk about holding on to the business for 20 years. I just haven't heard it yet. And maybe it's just the clientele that's coming to me, but it's there's a portion of that that's heartbreaking to me, because of the decisions that they are making today are being made with that generality, that exit plan. And we always say, know your exit before you ever start the company. Know exactly whether you're going to pass it down to your children, whether you're going to sell it to someone else, to help you make those decisions down the line. But at the end of the day, I very rarely, and it breaks my heart, but I don't hear them saying, oh, we're going to pass this down to our children.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think there's probably 10 different reasons why people are getting out prematurely. Off the top of my head, I would guess just threats, legal threats, and just blackouts and that sort of stuff.
I think there's a bit of disillusionment. Like, have you run into that in talking with some of your clients, or just even you yourself, who's kind of been doing this for a while in the industry, and then you start to work in the industry? I feel like, and we come across this on multitudes of guests that we've had, especially those who have been doing it for a bit, who have been consuming the plant for a bit, and now they're working in the industry. They tend to get a little bummed out about the realities of working. Sometimes it's just the fact that it's a job and it's work and it's hard, but a lot of times it's the seedy side of it, right? You come into this very altruistic, you believe in the natural power, healing ability of this plant. You believe in cannabis as an alternative to alcohol and opiates, and a healthier vice, if you want to look at it that way. There's a lot of different positives to the plant, and people come into this industry and they preach the positivity of the plant, and they are so excited to share this. And then they get into it, and it's, backstabbing, it's backroom deals, it's handshakes being broken, it's hoarding of biomass so other people, it gets gross sometimes. And I think when they see that, they go, oh, this is just like every other gosh darn job in the world, right? So I think there's some of that. I think that's a bit that people get into it. They get excited because they're working in weed, they're combining profession and passion, they're doing all these things. And then it's not just that it's a job, it's something you really like, and you realize, God, it's kind of gross and no one's paying their bills. And it's just like, ugh. I get sometimes, I think, talking with people. You try to stay positive. Is it hard for you, Sam, to stay positive and preach this when you feel like some of the negativeness of it, or do you try to push that out and keep that positive focus to keep people fired up?
I've been practicing something of not responding to negative energy. So, but it does get to me. Like, for example, one of my big prospecting strategies on LinkedIn, and probably once a week, I'll have a competitor go on there. Oh, that's terrible. Here's my interview calendar link. So you got to be kidding me, man. It's stuff like that. It also gets to me, to be honest with you. And to kind of touch on your previous point, I have one client, at least one client, who's bootstrapping, and so he has a 5-year plan. And so, he's investing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars with the eventual goal of making a profit. And I'm sure he's not the only one in this industry that's like that. And so I would imagine this is one of the reasons that people get disillusioned too, because I would imagine he's not the only one who's doing this. And so a lot of people, they'll go and make a small fortune in their other career or other job or whatever and say, hey, let's, cannabis, it's trending. Let's go into it. And, maybe they don't pick the right area. Maybe they don't have the right products, whatever it is. And so they'll be bootstrapping for 3 to 5 years. Then they just are left with this sour taste in their mouth. Maybe they, if the dispensary is a jet plane, maybe they didn't have the right wings. Maybe they didn't put in the right fuel. Maybe they didn't have the right.
Well, and they're entering into an industry that they know nothing about. And so that's another thing where it's like, people don't understand that the low hanging fruit is gone in this industry. It's you're going to have to work at it. And I really wonder, how much do you feel like the SEO, these certain things that you could do online with your website, with your content, how much do you feel like they're the low hanging fruit, and yet they're vital, they're important? You definitely want your clients to do it as opposed to not do it. But isn't it just the low hanging fruit that we all know we're supposed to be doing in some way? What isn't the low-hanging fruit that we should be going after? I believe that marketing is the largest bubble that we have all seen in all of the history of man. Beats out the tulip bubble, beats out any crypto or blockchain bubbles. It is so large, and the amount of spending on advertisement and marketing is so exorbitant. And it's exorbitant with the idea that it's almost proprietarily tracked. There's no real way to prove the metrics of exactly how you acquired this customer, where exactly they saw what they saw, how did you gain their loyalty for sure, and then how do you maintain that loyalty? And where do you see the fight against that being within this industry? You know, like I think about marketing in terms of like SMS marketing and this direct to consumer marketing outside of other platforms. You're sending them a text, they're getting their ad that day, they're saying yes or no, you know, that is better than some of these other ways. But again, how do you substantially track these metrics in a way that allows you to convey that you're really doing your job properly besides just sales going up?
You can track metrics based on clicks and where the clicks are going. If they're going over to the store, these are things you can put onto the website itself. And so if you wanted to track the sale, you absolutely can. It is a little easier in other industries. For example, if you're doing PPC ads, I'm in a mastermind of my coach. He used to do PPC ads for plastic surgeons. And so he'd make a landing page and he would immediately know if it boosted a sale. And so that's kind of, it's an opportunity that's yet to come in the cannabis industry, just because, PPC ads, there are agencies that do it, but, they'll get their lights turned out in 3 months. I've seen them come and go. To kind of answer your question, to kind of follow up on what you're talking about with marketing being a bubble, I personally disagree with that. I think, in any industry, you'll see companies with a CMO, a chief marketing officer. And that's because the CMO usually has knowledge and he specializes in that knowledge and he's constantly improving and learning new things. For example, yesterday, there's this big 2,500 page Google leak of what's going on in Google in the back door. A cannabis dispensary owner is not going to read that. I will. I'll look at all the points, find all the little tricks, and guess what? I'll implement them too. And we'll improve your site's marketing. We'll improve your dispensary's marketing. It's straight from the horse's mouth. And so, there's all these things that we do that are done across really any industry, whether it be email marketing, SMS marketing, SEO.
But it still takes a lot of time, like when Google changes their algorithm, like say their new one that just came out in May, where you saw a huge degradation of your stats based on them switching over to INP, to this initial, to the interaction to next paint, and it's this idea that, yes, they're telling you these algorithm changes, but it takes a company like Moz, who is tracking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of websites a year, to prove exactly what that algorithm change did and how to game it in some capacity. And so even with us staying on things, we're still delayed by 90 days, 180 days, a year before we truly know the metrics. And a lot of that is their proprietary algorithm changes that they don't talk about. And every company has some proprietary measure, especially in the cannabis industry. They're constantly dick swinging. They're constantly like, my extraction method is fucking better than your extraction method. We use nano emulsion technologies that are 16%.
There's a lot of my secret sauce is better than your secret sauce. Yet we all use water, light, earth, etc. But they're all like, no, we got the magic recipe in here.
And so to me, we are constantly battling a lagging metric. And so it's not like we're making changes ahead of time that we truly know are going to work based on whatever they're changing on their back end. And so that's why I say this proprietariness of these large corporations, of how they're using their technology and what they're using it for, even with Weed Maps and even with Leafly, their changes are not discussed in the same public forum that you would hope as a marketer, even when you're staying up to date. And so I guess my point is if there was a couple things that a company could do to really gain and boost that loyalty, to to really properly check. Again, how do you check a billboard that someone saw 30 times while they're driving to work for a month? And then they go to your store and buy something. How do you know that that marketing worked? Whereas this digital marketing is one thing. I can track your eyes. I can track your mouse movements. I can track exactly where you clicked on my website, why you clicked on it. If I change this font, I can do my A/B testing in certain capacities to really hone in on what works to generate more leads. But that's not, this entire industry isn't done digitally. You go to Michigan and there's 70,000 billboards for cannabis. What is the best way for them to track that loyalty? How do they really convey that it's working, spending all that money on print ads or again, things like that? And so that's why I think there is a massive bubble when it comes to client acquisition and where it came from, and then sustaining that loyalty over time. But to ask a question with that is, where do you feel the greatest benefit to gain loyalty as a cannabis brand? What technology should they be using?
I think a lot of people are fumbling their leads that come to their, whether it be through their website or their business listing, or even directly into their dispensary itself. And I think, one of the easiest low-bearing fruits, as you put it, is to collect their information. I think one of the biggest hidden gold mines, not just this industry, but really any industry. Like a lot of people, when they come to me, they'll be talking about how their sales are down, blah, 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 blah. And the first thing I'll usually think about is like, well, what's up with your customer list? You have a customer list? How's that going? And so I think really to kind of answer your question without going on a big tangent here is to kind of implement funnels on their website, whether it be for email and or SMS, and follow up to them until the end of the time, until they unsubscribe. Like, who cares?
So is it just both? Like I was going to say, is email or text better, or is it just you have to hit as many different angles and as many different potential points of contact with them as possible until they unsubscribe?
Well, generally, text is pretty hard. I would recommend, if you want a master in SMS marketing, I would recommend talking to a man named Ryan Stewart of Dispo Joy. And text messaging is really hard just because deliverability rates and carrier violations. And so really the big two, I think it's the big two, T-Mobile, Verizon, and United States, they don't like cannabis. They put it in the same category as guns and porn. And so if you're sending messages,
my favorite categories.
And so if you're sending messages and they realize that that's what you're doing, you're trying to sell cannabis, they'll block you, and you'll get in trouble. And so really the easiest route, in my opinion, would be the email marketing. However, the ROI, I would imagine, is best with SMS. And so can you get an ROI with email and SMS? Yes. Should you do them both? Yes. If you were just to do one of them, which one should you do? Probably SMS. It's a little bit more expensive though.
It's interesting. I go through, and Dustin and I, we work with clients and we'll put together, different, email newsletters, MailChimp things and stuff like that. And we go back and forth. I'm a simplistic guy. Dustin's an artistic, creative guy. And so we battle sometimes, like how much effort and time and work do you put into crafting this singular image if we're just looking for the shortest attention span clicks? Do you think, for specifically when it comes to email marketing and such, or maybe even some other digital marketing like social media and such, is the emphasis on, and I know there's no right answer here, but just preference based on your kind of experience, would you put a more emphasis on creating quality content or creating a quantity of content? And I know there's a balance, but if you had to choose between get it out there and it's got a couple smudges, so to speak, or this is an piece of art and then it only comes out once a week, is there a balance to that quantity versus quality battle when it comes to putting out content, emails, social media, text messages, etc.?
In my personal opinion, quality 100 times more over quantity, with an exception. For example, 420. If you're doing 420 specials, that's the number one day of revenue for most cannabis dispensaries, you should do quality and quantity. For example, we had a client who we published their post like 6 weeks ago, or 6 weeks before 420, excuse me. They had number one rankings, number two, number three rankings nationally. And, it was just like this, it was the funniest thing ever. If you look at their traffic, look kind of like, you can't see my finger here. It went like this, spiked, then back down. And they reached back to me the following day. It's like, Sam, I don't know what you were doing, But we just had the best day of sales in the past 3 years. And so we did that alongside an email campaign, as well as an SMS campaign on top of that. And so you're hitting them in every single way that we possibly can, whether it be through organic search, SEO, SMS, email. And in this case, it really worked out well. I think I'm going on a tangent.
No, you're not. You're great. Here. Don't worry about it. I mean, we're all over the fucking board too. That's part of the problem of cannabis.
It's part of our charm. It's part of our appeal, our inability to stay on topic. In that, I have something I'm curious about. Shout out to Lucas, by the way, in Spender, SPENDR. If you're in Ohio, Michigan, check him out. I am a huge fan of Spender. If you're not familiar with Samuel, it's a proprietary app here in these two states that are a cashless payment system, right? Lucas has found a way to circumvent the banks. You sign up, you get into it, you put it straight into your account, and you pay it. There's a few other competitors. We got CannaPay, we got Dutchy Pay. I think that is another avenue that is going to really help attract people into the dispensaries as you push away from the cash. Obviously, you're dealing right now with kind of IRC 280E with this Schedule 1, Schedule 3 stuff. It doesn't allow you to use traditional federally insured forms of payment, credit cards, stuff like that. Most banks don't want to F with that either. So you're left in this world of these different apps and different cashless payments and such. And a lot of them have different cool things when it comes to like geo-tracking or different ads that pop up in there. Where are you at just like on cashless payments? Is there a lot of marketing opportunities? Or if you had one of these, just ask your question, right? I had the exact same question asked of me. I'll ask it of you. Someone's trying to pitch a company I'm working with. They want to start selling, all these different things, the geo-tracking pop up on the cash on this app, all that. Do you think that's an opportunity or an avenue for people to look into right now?
Absolutely. Look at it this way. With the previous model, everybody had to come in with cash, right? And so in many cases, you still have to come in with cash. Okay. So let's look at some basic business practice like upselling. If a customer walks in with $40 in their pocket, or a 50, whatever. And they come in and they just want to buy, whether it be an ETH, right? They get in there and they find this cool vaporizer that they also want to buy, but they don't have the cash and they don't want to go back to the ATM. It's going to be a hassle. I'm going to get this $5 ATM charge, man. I don't want to do it. I right there, I see the value right there, because right there, once you get to the checkout, if they're paying by card as opposed to cash, they have a lot more freedom to be upsold. And so it's going to help their dispensary. And I think that's just one big point.
But aren't we just doing the same fucking thing we've always done with the web and with everything in general, where we have a gatekeeper who's gatekeeping or controlling these transactions in some way? Oh, great. I got to go to fucking Spender to run my thing. I have to have Visa process my transaction. I need eBay to run the servers and the service and hold all the data and make sure that this person has money and this person can get it, and then I'll allow the sending. To me, it's such an archaic form that's why I'm like, why the fuck wouldn't the cannabis industry use a Web 3.0 technology in order to cut out this centralization of people controlling this info? Why do they can convert these into dollar bills instantly without a third party, without any need. It's instantly verifiable. They can't send the money without having the money in the bank. It does everything that fucking Visa does or that these other services do. And that's where Web3 is going to change this. And again, this goes all the way to the advancements in marketing, to where having control over my data, saying who I want to share it with, who I don't, and having that data tracked across the web on every source and knowing exactly who has it, that's not going to be possible until the proliferation of Web 3, not Web 2, not creating these other weed map services, Leafly services. It's when it's finally decentralized, in which we have the fucking technology to decentralize the whole industry. We don't need any of this shit that we keep praising or propping up. And I have a hard time believing that that's the future, that a company like Spender is going to be a necessity, a necessary trait or a necessary entity in this marketplace, as opposed to just the next 10 years until people wake the fuck up. Because I can process a credit. I can do everything I need to do with other technologies and have absolutely nobody to stop the money from getting into my bank account or taking it out of my bank account for that matter, if I use some of these technologies. And so there's something to be said about, I almost feel like we're still acting like we're this new and emerging technology or new and emerging industry, but yet we're using fucking Stone Age tools.
All right, let me take Spender off our potential advertisers list. Thank you very much for that, Dustin.
You're preaching to the choir, man. I'm here for the blockchain revolution as well.
Oh my God, you two! I'm just gonna go off camera. All right, hold on. You two have 2 minutes. Hold on. This is what happens right now. You two have 2 minutes.
He literally just left. To me, I do believe that we're going to be more control of what we're doing, and we're going to have less friction with how we do it. And so I'm really surprised when I do see a lot of these companies not even looking into the alternatives that are even available today. And we do see a lot of things where the Dutchy Pay getting big, Spender getting big. And again, I'm like, if you would have just spent a year and a half working towards the implementing of this other stuff, you'll never, ever have to change. You just will never, ever have to do something different. And you'd still be first to market doing it. If you can train your customers to use that, you're already at a higher benefit than all these other people. And again, it's more trackable. And so now I can prove loyalty. Now I have better metrics across multiple POS systems, exactly who that client was, exactly what they saw, exactly what they bought. And more control over how I want to send them information or ads or any other type of marketing. And so it breaks my heart because this is my 13th year in blockchain, and it's just heartbrearking. It's just fucking.
I hope you're a millionaire. I hope you're a Bitcoin millionaire.
Man,
13.
Yeah, well, when I originally, I used to build adult websites, large scale social networks in the adult industry, and at that time, Visa was taking 70 cents of every dollar to process a transaction. 70 cents, and at the same point, Bitcoin was taking 0.5% for that same transaction, and it was instant. It was everything else that it needed to be, but out of the social networks in which I owned and which I sold before I started my head shop and all these other industries that I've been in, it took me 2 years, and we had thousands of Bitcoin for the website to help with these transactions, to help with these memberships, to help with all this other shit. And at the same point, after 2 years and 20, 40, 60,000 members being preached to about it, only 0.5% themselves even decided to use it. And so back then, it was a hard sell. It was a much harder sell than it is today, where technology and wallets and shit are today. And even then, it was like, God damn it, I still need funds for my own things. I might as well go start a business that I know I can generate capital daily, as opposed to holding and stuff. And I have made money off of Bitcoin, but surely not the $15 million that my Bitcoin was once worth when we did have 2000. And so, no, and more than anything, it's a heartbreak, but I still am an absolute believer in the power of it, because I've seen it work, and especially in the adult industry, and especially with fuckers who were taking enormous amounts of money for very, very menial tasks, or calling something extremely high risk when it's less high risk than some of these other industries in which they cater to that are much more fucked up. And so I don't know. That was a nice big rant. But
I think one little follow-up point that we can move on. I think with blockchain, I think one of the things that people may not necessarily realize is that it not necessarily Bitcoin, but there are many blockchains that are untraceable, and they're privacy chains. They're completely private. And so, if you're a cannabis brand owner, definitely first consult with your lawyer over this. But just note that it's just as untraceable as cash. Can be.
Well, yeah, and the process, I can easily swipe a card in store, which purchases crypto and transfers that to my POS system, and then clears out the transaction, and never again. I am now not selling cannabis to my Visa company. I am now selling gift cards. I am now selling something else that is not as high of risk as cannabis, and the POS can easily convert and remediate any one of those transactions instantly. And so I'm not losing money. I'm not dealing, with swings in prices or anything like that. It seems like they've all missed the boat when they've all been searching for the exact same tool that is already out there. It's heartbreak. Either way,
It
BC, it's time for you to.
Yeah, time for to do it. We're talking with Samuel Fisher, Green Dispensary Marketing. Thank you, Sam, for hanging with us today. One more question here before we kind of wrap up. We have like different companies, right? And you have kind of companies that get started, companies that are looking to create a presence. And it's tough sometimes when you're state by state. So when you're kind of thinking or preparing or onboarding a client, let's start there to wrap up. What are some like 2 or 3 easy steps or bits of information or things that every client should know kind of before they come to you? Because I think that's that part, that information and that research stage and kind of going back and forth, which can frustrate folks working with consultants and such like that. So what are some things before someone gets started, before they head up to Green Dispensary Marketing, before they send you an email and you help them really transition to a very successful campaign to increase sales, to increase that? What are some things or some starter points that they should know, that they should be aware of, that they should have collected to bring with you to kind of start and kick off the conversation?
Look, so we'll manage your online web presence. We can do that for you. If you are not quite ready to the point where you want to invest in us, I'll be transparent with you. The first thing you should be doing, and this is really the number one thing you should be doing, is you should be looking at the opportunities that you already have right there. And so what I'm specifically talking about is the customer list. If you have their emails, their phone number, start a retargeting campaign. You get on a platform, if they're opting in, you can go to an email marketing tool like MailChimp. They're not super cannabis friendly, but they're one of the tools that exist. Start sending out some email campaigns to them. Get on a cannabis friendly text platform. I'd recommend talking to Ryan Stewart at Dispo Joy over this, and start sending some texts out. Reach out to the people that you already have. And then secondly, simultaneously, if you don't already have a website, build a website, and then put in a loyalty program, a funnel for gathering customer information. So that way, when you come to me, we'll help you optimize the pages, whatever, but we'll also help you build your list. And so that's really the biggest tip that I would give to people, is to maximize the opportunities that you already have, and continue to reach out to them. Don't be afraid to reach out to somebody just because they haven't bought from you in a month.
No, and it only takes a couple times of getting in front of their eyes to gain that loyalty. The power of 3 is a real thing in business. If you can get someone to talk about it, show them an ad, and then have that last bit of marketing, get them for their third, you can gain that loyalty. And customers are highly loyal to cost right now. But they also have their select brands that when they treat themselves or when they are looking for specific deals, they still are looking for deals from a very specific company that they're loyal to. Yes, they may choose price some of the time, but they're still saying, these are my top 3. If those are on sale, I'm going to them first, and then I'm moving down to anybody else. And so that loyalty, gaining that loyalty is definitely should be priority number 1 on a lot of these companies.
Yeah, remember, this is straight from a dispensary owner's mouth. People that go to Weebmaps and Leafly are just looking for the cheapest deals possible. There.
And so what you got to do, everyone listening right now, find ways to help those customers who are looking for the cheap products, but are also looking for all sorts of information. And that's what Sam Fisher, that's what Green Dispensary Marketing can do for you. Thank you, Sam, for hanging with us on the Because Cannabis podcast. We definitely appreciate it. We'll put a lot of those links. We took some notes from those folks you mentioned. We'll put links to them in the comments below. You'll also find a link to Green Dispensary Marketing and the social media. Sam's LinkedIn will be in there as well. So you can find those links below in the comments. Hit Sam up, follow him on social media and
Thank
such.
You so much, Sam.
Thanks, Sam, for joining us. We appreciate your time
You're
today.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. BC, Dustin, you guys are doing great things. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That was Sam Fisher, Green Dispensary Marketing. Make sure you check him out in the links below. Do that. Make sure you follow that. Hit that subscribe button on the way down. It's literally on the way to the links. As your eyeballs right now are scrolling down, you have to pass the subscribe button before you get to Sam Fisher's Green Dispensary Marketing link. 2 for 1, bro. Hit the link. Hit the subscription button. Dustin, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Sam Fisher, for joining us as well. Every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Thursdays on Spotify with video, and anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts. Follow us at MeetWM socially, wayward.media on the interwebs. Dustin, see you next week, buddy.
Later, brother.